blizzard hit us on the third day. We were a team of 4 seasoned climbers, mapping an uncharted stretch of the Rockies. Marcus, the leader, Lena, our medic, Ben, the gear specialist, and me, Alex, the navigator. We found a derelict hunter's cabin just as the world turned white. It was ancient, the wood groaning under the wind's assault. Inside, it was a single, dusty room, empty except for a stone fireplace and a message carved crudely into the wall above it. It read, "The ration rule. Never eat more than the weakest." We laughed it off. A grim joke from some long-gone prospector. We had plenty of supplies, enough to wait out any storm. But the storm didn't pass. Days bled into a week, then 2. The wind howled like a starving animal, and our food supplies dwindled with terrifying speed. The laughter stopped. We started rationing, our portions getting smaller and smaller. Ben was the first to really suffer. He'd always been lean, but now he was just a skeleton draped in winter gear. His cough was a wet, rattling sound that filled the small cabin. That's when Marcus enforced the rule. He pointed to the carving. "From now on, no one eats more than Ben can." We protested, but Marcus was firm. "It's the only way we stay equal. Stay a team." So we did. We'd measure out Ben's meager portion, a few spoonfuls of rehydrated mush, and we'd all eat the same. It was torture. Hunger gnawed at us, a constant, dull ache that made thinking impossible. We gray weaker, but we grew weak together. One evening, Ben didn't wake up for his meal. Lena checked on him. Her face was pale when she turned back to us. "He's gone," she whispered. A heavy silence fell over the cabin. We were sad, of course, but a darker, more selfish thought crept into my mind, and I saw it in Marcus's and Lena's eyes too. Now the weakest was gone. Now we could eat more. Marcus measured out the food that night, a full portion for each of us. It tasted like heaven. I felt strength returning to my limbs, warmth spreading through my chest. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. We would survive this. We stored Ben's body in the coldest corner of the cabin, wrapped in his sleeping bag. It felt drunk, but we had no other choice. The next day, Lena started coughing. It was the same rattling cough Ben had. It started subtly, but by evening, she could barely sit up. She was burning with fever, her appetite gone. Marcus looked at the wall, then at Lena's uneaten food. His face was grim. "The rule still stands," he said, his voice low. "We eat what she eats." My heart sank. Not again. We'd just had a taste of what it felt like to be full, to be strong. Now we were back to starvation portions. Anger, hot and bitter, rose in my throat. I looked at Marcus. Was this loyalty, or was it madness? But I complied. We ate Lena's tiny share, our stomachs screaming in protest. The hunger was worse this time, sharpened by the memory of that one full meal. Lena faded fast. Within 2 days, she was gone too. Now, it was just me and Marcus. We sat in silence, the bodies of our friends lying in the frozen corner of the room. The storm still raged. We had so little food left. Marcus looked at me, his eyes hollowed out by hunger and grief. "It's just us now, Alex," he said. "We share what's left. Equally." We did. For a few more days, we ate equal, tiny portions, but the hunger was an insidious poison. It twisted my thoughts. I started watching Marcus. He seemed stronger than me. He moved with more purpose. His voice was less of a rasp. Was he taking more? Was he eating when I was asleep? Paranoia began to consume me. I saw him glance at the corner where Lena and Ben lay. Was he thinking what I thought he was thinking? One night, I pretended to be asleep. I watched through slitted eyes as Marcus got up. He didn't go for the food pack. He went to the fireplace and pulled a loose stone from the back. Behind it was a small, hidden stash of rations, my own emergency supply that I had hidden from everyone. He was stealing my food. Rage, pure and primal, surged through me. All this talk of rules and equality. It was all a lie. He was just trying to make sure he was the last one standing. I didn't think. I grabbed the heaviest piece of firewood from the hearth and stood up. "You liar," I hissed. "Espunaron." His eyes wide with a fear that had nothing to do with me. "Alex, no, you don't understand. It's not for me." But I wasn't listening. The hunger was in control. It was a screaming beast in my head, demanding to be fed. We fought. In our weakened state, it was a clumsy, desperate struggle. We crashed against the wall, and my head slammed against the stone. For a moment, the room spun. When my vision cleared, I saw it. Just outside the cabin's single, grimy window. It was tall and gaunt, its skin the color of old bone, stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Its limbs were too long, ending in jagged claws, and its eyes. They were pits of burning hunger. It wasn't looking at the cabin. It was looking right at me. And it was smiling, a lipless grin that split its face. That's when I finally understood. Terul was NT. About fairness. It was about not showing strength. It was a warning. Marcus hadn't been stealing the food for himself. He had been trying to keep me weak. He knew what was out there. He knew what it was drawn to. He saw the realization in my eyes. "It hunts the strongest," he croaked, blood trickling from his lip. "The rule. It keeps it away. It makes you invisible. It looks for the one who thrives while others fail. It feeds on that strength." The creature outside took a step towards the cabin, its movements unnaturally fluid. It was no longer interested in the cabin as a whole. It had chosen. It had found the strongest prey. My little hidden stash of food, my brief moment of selfish rage, had been a beacon in the storm. I had eaten more than the weakest. I had broken the rule. And now, the true master of this frozen hell was coming to collect its ration. The cabin door began to splinter inward. The knocking started just after midnight. It wasn't the rhythmic, polite rap of a neighbor. It was a frantic, almost desperate sound, like someone was throwing their entire body against the door. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I live out in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest town. Visitors, especially at this hour, were unheard of. I crept to the peephole, my hand shaking. The porch light cast a pale, yellow glow on an empty porch. There was nothing there. I told myself it was the wind, a branch hitting the house, anything to calm my nerves. But then it happened again. A series of rapid, hard thuds against the front door. This time, I heard something else, a low, guttural breathing on the other side. I looked through the peephole again. Still nothing. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a person. A person can't be invisible. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. I grabbed the heavy iron poker from the fireplace, my only makeshift weapon. The knocking stopped. Silence descended on the house, a heavy, suffocating silence that was almost worse than the noise. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, listening, waiting. Then, I heard a faint scratching sound. It wasn't at the front door anymore. It was at the back door, the one leading to the kitchen. Slowly, I made my way to the kitchen, the poker held tight in my sweaty palms. The scratching grew louder. Maureen, it was the sound of long nails, or maybe claws, scraping against the wood. I peered through the small glass pane at the top of the door. The backyard was bathed in moonlight, and for a moment, I saw nothing. Then, a shape moved at the edge of the woods. It was tall and unnaturally thin, its limbs moving with a jerky, disjointed motion. It didn't look human. It turned its head, and even from this distance, I could feel its gaze on the house. It took a step forward, then another, moving with a horrifying speed. It was at the back door in seconds. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. I saw its hand or what looked like a hand reach for the doorknob. The fingers were too long, too spindly, ending in dark, sharp points. It twisted the knob, rattling it violently. But the door was locked. A sound of frustration, a low growl, vibrated through the wood. It didn't seem to understand the concept of a lock. It just kept twisting the knob, harder and harder, as if expecting it to simply give way. Then, it started knocking again. That same frantic, desperate pounding. But this time it wasn't just using its fists. It was using its head, slamming it against the door with sickening thuds. I was paralyzed with fear, watching this monstrous thing try to break into my home. For the next hour, it moved around the house, testing every point of entry. It scratched at the windows, rattled the frames, and slammed its body against the walls. It tried the basement door, the garage door, even the small doggy door I'd sealed up years ago. With each attempt, its frustration grew. It would let out these choked, gurgling noises, sounds that were a grotesque imitation of human speech. It was trying to talk, trying to mimic sounds it had heard. But the result was a terrifying word, salad of guttural clicks and wet, rasping whispers. The most horrifying part was its complete lack of understanding. Itsawa door, itsawa knob. And it assumed they all worked the same way. When the front doorknob turned, but the door didn't open because of the deadbolt, it just kept turning the knob, over and over, faster and faster, unable to comprehend the second locking mechanism. It was like watching a broken machine, a glitching program trying to execute a command it couldn't process. This wasn't just an animal. This was something intelligent, but its intelligence was alien, incomplete. It was a mimic, a copycat, that had observed human behavior, but hadn't grasped the why behind it. I retreated to the center of the house too, my bedroom, and locked the door. I pushed my heavy dresser in front of it, my hands trembling so badly I could barely get a grip. I sat on my bed, clutching the fireplace poker, listening to the sounds of this thing as it circled my home. I heard it try to climb onto the roof. I heard its claws scraping against the shingles, the sound echoing through the attic. It was looking for a way in, any way in. It was relentless. Then, I heard it at my bedroom window. It was on the second floor. It had climbed the side of the house. I couldn't bring myself to look. I could hear its ragged breathing just outside the glass. It tapped on the window, a gentle, almost curious tap. 1, 2, 3 times. It was trying a new tactic. It was imitating the sound of a polite visitor. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stayed completely still, not making a sound. The tapping stopped. Then, a new sound. It was the sound of a voice, a woman's voice. "Honey? Let me in. I forgot my key." It was a perfect imitation of my wife's voice, but my wife had passed away 3 years ago. A wave of nausea and terror washed over me. It had learned. It was listening, picking up sounds, memories, anything it could use. The voice came again, laced with a sweet, cloying concern. "It's cold out here. Please, open the door." I squeezed my eyes shut, tears streaming down my face. I knew it wasn't her. It was a monster, wearing her voice like a costume. I didn't answer. I just sat there, shaking, as it continued to call to me, its voice slowly degrading, becoming distorted and monstrous, the human words dissolving back into those awful, guttural clicks and rasps. It was like a recording wearing out. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. As the first rays of light hit the house, the sound stopped. The scratching, the knocking, the voice, all gone. There was only silence. I waited for a full hour after the sun was up before I dared to move. I slowly pushed the dresser away from the door and crept out of my room. The house was a mess. There were deep gouges on all the doors, the wood splintered and torn. The window frames were bent. Muddy, inhuman-looking prints were smeared on the glass. I went to the back door and looked out into the yard, near the edge of the woods. I saw it one last time. It was standing there, a tall, shadowy figure, partially obscured by the trees. It just stood there, watching the house. It wasn't trying to get in anymore. It was just observing, learning, as if it was memorizing the layout, studying my defenses for its next attempt. Then, as if it knew I was watching, it turned and melted back into the shadows of the forest. I haven't slept properly since that night. Every creak of the house, Every gust of wind makes me jump. I've reinforced all the doors and windows with steel bars, but I know it won't be enough. It's not about strength. It's about intelligence. It's learning. It didn't understand doors that night. But it will. It will watch. It will listen. And it will learn. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that it will be back. And next time it might just find a way in. The first time we saw him, we thought he was just another lost hiker, another soul chewed up and spit out by the unforgiving wilderness. He stumbled out of the tree line near our remote ranger station, gaunt and skeletal, his eyes wide with a terror that seemed permanently etched onto his face. We rushed out ready with blankets and hot broth, the usual routine for survivors. But this man wasn't usual. He waved away the food, his gaze fixed not on the steaming bowl, but on my partner Dave. And then he started muttering, 300,000, maybe 350. Dave and I exchanged a look. Shock, maybe. Hypothermia can do strange things to the mind. We guided him inside, sat him by the fire. He was shivering, but not from the cold. It was a deep internal tremor. His name was Elias, he eventually told us, part of a climbing expedition that had gone missing weeks ago. He was the only one who'd made it back. When we asked what happened to the others, his eyes darted around the room, landing on me this time. 280,000, he whispered, his voice raspy. Good muscle mass. Liam, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind howling outside. He wasn't looking at the food on the table. He was looking at us, at people. And he was counting calories. Over the next few hours, his condition didn't improve. He refused all food, every last bit. He'd just sit there, his eyes scanning us, muttering numbers. 190,000 for the woman at the radio, he'd say, nodding towards Sarah, our lower fat content. It was deeply unsettling. He was starving, literally wasting away before our eyes. Yet the only sustenance he seemed interested in was us. He described his lost companions not by name, but by their caloric value. Jenna, she was a light one, maybe 160,000. Not enough. The way he said not enough made the hair on my arm stand up. It wasn't regret, it was calculation. Night fell, and a blizzard rolled in, trapping us. The power flickered and died, plunging the station into the dim, dancing light of our emergency lanterns. Elias seemed to grow stronger in the darkness. His shivering stopped. He sat straighter, and his eyes, which had been hazy and distant, were now sharp, focused, and predatory. He'd stare into the fire, and I could have sworn his shadow on the wall was wrong. Taller, thinner, with limbs that seemed just a little too long, angles that weren't quite human. He started talking about the hunger. Not his hunger, but the hunger. He said it was an old, cold thing that lived in the wind and the trees. He said it found his party when they were weakest, when their food ran out. It offers you a choice, he rasped, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that barely carried over the storm. Starve or eat. Really eat. You eat, and the hunger becomes a part of you. You don't feel the cold anymore. You don't feel weak. You just feel empty, and you start to see the world differently. He turned his head slowly, his gaze locking onto Dave again. You see the real fuel, the walking, talking calories all around you. 400,000 right there. He licked his chapped lips. There was no desperation in his eyes anymore, only appetite. We tried to lock him in a supply room for our own safety, but he was deceptively strong. The man who looked like he could be pushed over by a stiff breeze threw Dave against a wall like he was a child's toy. We barricaded ourselves in the main office. Outside the door, we could hear him. At first, it was just the muttering, the endless, awful counting. But then, it changed. A scratching sound started at the door, a slow, deliberate scrape of something hard against the wood. His voice began to warp, stretching and thinning, becoming something high and reedy, like the whistle of wind through a narrow crack. It mimicked voices. First, it was Sarah's. "Let me in, guys." I'm cold. Then Dave's. It's okay. I got him. Open up. He was learning. The scratching grew louder, more frantic. It wasn't fingernails. It sounded like bone or antlers. Through the small, reinforced window in the door, I caught a glimpse. In the flickering lantern light, his face seemed to be elongating, his jaw unhinging. His skin was stretched tight and pale over his skull, and his eyes glowed with a faint, chilling light of their own. The numbers had stopped. Now, it was just one word, repeated over and over in that terrible, inhuman voice. Hungry. 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 The wood of the door began to splinter. He wasn't trying to pick the lock or break the handle. He was trying to chew his way through. We radioed for help, our voices shaking, but the blizzard was too thick. No one was coming until morning, if we made it to morning. The sounds from the other side were no longer remotely human. It was the sound of a rabid animal, a chorus of snarls, clicks, and that high, whistling mimicry that crawled under your skin. The entire frame of the door was shaking now, bowing inward with each impact. We could smell it, too, a scent of rot and cold earth and something else. Something like old, dried meat. We knew what was out there. The stories the old-timers tell, the legends you dismiss as campfire tales, the spirit of the lonely places, the eternal hunger given form. Elias wasn't a survivor. He was a vessel, a doorway, and he had brought the hunger in from the cold, right to our doorstep. The door is about to give way. I don't know how many calories I am, but I'm about to find out. Thanks for listening. If you find yourself lost in the woods, remember some things are worse than starving. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the edge of the map. Stay safe out there. The old woman from the trading post always told us, if you suspect something isn't human, ask it to smile. She claimed they couldn't do it right, that their muscles would pull wrong, creating a grotesque parody of joy. It was a test, she'd say. A simple way to see the monster hiding beneath the skin. I never believed her. Chalking it up to reservation folklore meant to spook tourists. I was a park ranger, grounded in logic and procedure. Then came the search for David Thorne. David was an experienced hiker, a man who knew the canyons like the back of his hand. So when he didn't return from a solo trek, we launched a full-scale search and rescue operation. For 3 days, we combed the rugged terrain of northern Arizona. We found nothing. No footprints, no discarded gear, no sign of a struggle. It was as if the desert had simply swallowed him whole. On the 4th day, just as we were about to call it off, he walked out of the woods and right up to our base camp. He looked fine. A little thin, maybe a bit dehydrated, but otherwise unharmed. We were ecstatic, relieved, but as I debriefed him, a strange feeling began to crawl up my spine. He was too calm, too detached. His eyes, usually bright with life, seemed flat and empty, like polished stones. He answered my questions in a monotone, his voice lacking its usual warmth. He said he'd gotten lost, wandered in circles, and survived on stream water. It was a plausible story, yet something felt fundamentally wrong. That evening, back at the ranger station, the team celebrated. We ordered pizzas, someone brought a case of soda, and the small office filled with laughter and relief. David sat in the corner, silent, just watching us. His gaze was unnerving, intensely focused, not like someone rejoining society, but like an alien studying a new species. He watched our faces as we joked and laughed, his head tilting slightly, his expression completely blank. My partner, Jake, must have noticed it too. He walked over to David, slapped him on the back, and said, "Come on, Dave. Lighten up. You're safe now, man. Give us a smile." David just stared at him. The room quieted down, everyone turning to look. Jake, feeling awkward, forced a wide, toothy grin, like this. See? Smile. He held the expression, and David's eyes narrowed, studying Jake's face with an unnerving precision. He seemed to be memorizing the curve of the lips, the crinkle around the eyes, the way the cheeks bunched up. Then, slowly, mechanically, David tried to replicate it. It was the single most horrifying thing I have ever witnessed. His lips pulled back from his teeth, but it wasn't a smile. It was a baring of enamel, a stretching of flesh that didn't reach his eyes. The muscles in his cheeks twitched and pulled in the wrong directions, creating deep, unnatural creases in his skin. It was a grotesque, painful-looking grimace, a predator's snarl trying to disguise itself as human joy. The room went dead, silent. The old woman's words echoed in my mind. They can't do it right. In that moment, we all knew. The thing sitting in the chair wasn't David Thorne. Jake took a step back, his own smile gone, replaced by a mask of sheer terror. Someone near the door let out a choked gasp. The thing that looked like David held its ghastly smile for a moment longer, its dead eyes scanning our horrified faces. It seemed to be processing our reaction, learning from its mistake. Then, the smile vanished as quickly as it had appeared, and its face returned to a blank, emotionless mask. Without a word, it stood up. The movement was wrong, too fluid, too fast. It wasn't the tired shuffle of a man who'd been lost in the wilderness. It was the smooth, silent grace of a hunter. It turned its head, its neck seeming to rotate just a little too far, and looked directly at me. There was no recognition, no humanity, just a cold, calculating intelligence. It knew that we knew. The test had been performed, and it had failed. It walked towards the door. No one moved. We were frozen. A room full of people paralyzed by a primal fear we couldn't comprehend. It didn't run. It just walked out of the ranger station and disappeared into the night. We never saw it again. We filed a report, of course. We said David Thorne, suffering from severe psychological trauma and dehydration, had experienced a psychotic break and wandered off. It was the only explanation that made sense on paper, but we all knew the truth. We had celebrated the return of a man who was already gone, replaced by something that had studied him, worn his skin, and tried to walk among us. We never found David's body. Sometimes, when I'm out on patrol near those canyons, I think I see a figure in the distance, watching from the ridgeline, and I remember that terrible, twisted smile. The smile test. It's not just folklore, it's a warning. Because sometimes, the things that walk out of the wilderness aren't the same things that walked in. The first sign was the trees. We were a trail crew, 4 of us, carving a new path through a remote stretch of the Bitterroot National Forest. For days, it was just the rhythm of axes, the scent of pine, and the easy camaraderie of hard work. Then, Liam found the first one. It was an old-growth cedar, and its bark was gone. Not peeled in patches like a disease, but stripped clean and long, vertical gujes. The lines started maybe 7 feet up and ran all the way to the base, as if something incredibly tall had stood there, methodically scraping it bare. We'd all seen bears, elk, even moose do damage to trees. But this was different. The marks were too precise, too uniform. Over the next mile, we found 3 more, all identical. An unsettling silence fell over our crew. The usual banter died, replaced by the whisper of the wind and the snapping of twigs under our boots. That night, the cold bit deeper than usual. Huddled around the campfire, none of us wanted to admit how spooked we were. Dave, our crew leader, and a man who'd spent 30 years in these woods, tried to rationalize it. Probably a new kind of beetle, he'd said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. But beetles don't work in straight lines, and they don't start 7 feet off the ground. That's when the sounds began. At first, it was faint, a high-pitched whistle that seemed to dance on the edge of hearing, weaving through the trees. We'd all stop, listen, then shake our heads, blaming the wind. But as the night deepened, the whistle grew bolder, closer. It was punctuated by a sound like a heavy branch snapping, then another and another, moving in a wide circle around our camp. We doused the fire early and retreated to our tents, zipping them up tight as if the thin nylon could offer any real protection. Sleep was impossible. Every rustle of leaves, every hoot of an owl, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Sometime after midnight, I heard it right outside my tent. A slow, heavy scraping sound. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs. It sounded like nails dragging against rock, a methodical, rhythmic scratch. 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 Then a low guttural sound. Something between a growl and a pained moan. It was a sound of profound hunger, a deep, resonant emptiness that seemed to drain the warmth from the air. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for it to go away. The scraping stopped, and for a long moment, there was only silence. I strained my ears, listening for a footstep, a breath, anything. But there was nothing. It was as if whatever was out there had simply vanished. The next morning, no one spoke of the noises. We just packed up faster than usual, eager to put distance between us in that spot. But the forest had changed. The air felt heavy, oppressive. The birds were silent. As we hiked, we started seeing more of the stripped trees. Dozens of them now, lining our path like sentinels. The marks on them seemed fresher. The exposed wood was still pale, almost wet-looking. Liam, who was at the front, suddenly stopped dead. He pointed a trembling finger. Ahead of us, hanging from a low-hanging pine branch, was a deer, or what was left of it. It was completely intact. Not a mark on its hide, but it was just hollow. Its bones were picked clean, as if something had meticulously reached inside and consumed it from within, leaving the skin like a discarded coat. Its eyes were wide open, locked in a look of pure terror. Panic finally broke our stoic facade. Dave yelled for us to run. We didn't need telling twice. We abandoned our tools, our packs, everything, and just ran. We scrambled down the half-finished trail, tripping over roots and rocks, driven by a primal fear. Behind us, that high-pitched whistle erupted, no longer distant but right on our heels, a sound of pure, malevolent glee. It was accompanied by the crash of something immense moving through the trees, keeping pace with us effortlessly. I didn't dare look back. I could feel its presence, a cold spot in the air, a pressure against my back. It felt ancient, starved, and intelligent. The whistle warped into something new, a perfect mimicry of a human scream. It was my voice. It was screaming my name. Then it started mimicking the others. I heard Liam's name being shrieked from the trees to my left, then Dave's from the right. It was toying with us, trying to separate us. We just kept running, blind with terror. The woods a blur of green and brown. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, menacing shadows. We burst out of the tree line and onto an old logging road, our lungs burning, our legs screaming. We didn't stop. We ran down that gravel road for what felt like miles until we saw the distant glint of a ranger station as the roof. As we stumbled towards the light, the whistling finally faded behind us, swallowed by the darkening woods. The ranger who found us thought we were delirious. He listened to our frantic story, his face a mask of professional concern. But his eyes held a flicker of something else. Recognition. Fear. He just told us we'd been out in the wilderness too long, that the isolation plays tricks on the mind. But we knew what we saw. We knew what we heard. I never went back into those woods. Sometimes, on cold, quiet nights, I can still hear that whistle on the wind, and I remember the stripped trees, the hollowed-out deer, and the chilling, perfect mimicry of my own voice, calling my name from the darkness. There are things in the deep woods that are older than the trails we build. Things that are patient and always hungry. Thanks for watching. If you want more stories from the dark woods, make sure to subscribe. The first time it happened, I brushed it off as a glitch. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the screen illuminating the dark bedroom. I squinted at it, my heart giving a little jolt when I saw the caller ID. It was my own name, my own number. A pocket dial, a weird network error. I let it go to voicemail, rolled over, and tried to go back to sleep. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I listened to the voicemail. It was just static, a faint, rhythmic scratching sound, almost like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I deleted it and forgot all about it. But then it happened again the next night. Same time, just after midnight. My own number flashing on the screen. This time, I didn't answer either. The voicemail left was different. The scratching was still there, but underneath it, I could hear something else. A low, guttural breathing. It was faint, but it was unmistakably the sound of something alive. A stray dog, maybe. A coyote? I live on the edge of a sprawling nature preserve, so strange animal sounds weren't entirely unheard of. Still, a chill crawled up my spine. Why would it be on a voicemail from my own number the third night? I was waiting for it. I sat on my couch, every light in the house on, staring at my phone. As the clock ticked past midnight, it buzzed to life. My number again. My hand trembled as I swiped to answer. "Hello," I whispered. Silence, just dead air. Then, I heard it. Not through the phone, but from outside. A soft tapping on my living room window. My blood ran cold. I held my breath, listening. The tapping stopped. Through the phone, I heard a faint whisper, a distorted, airy sound that almost sounded like my own voice. "Let me in," it rasped. I screamed and threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my closet, a kitchen knife clutched in my hand, listening to every creak and groan of the house. The tapping didn't return. When the sun finally rose, I felt a wave of relief so powerful it made me dizzy. I convinced myself it was an elaborate, cruel prank. Someone had spoofed my number. Someone was messing with me. I cleaned up the broken phone and decided to go to the store and get a new one, to change my number, to put this whole nightmare behind me. As I stepped out my front door, I froze. There, in the soft mud of my flower bed, right below the living room window, were footprints. They were long and unnaturally thin, not quite human, but definitely not animal. And leading away from them, back towards the woods, was a single, long drag mark, as if something had been crawling on its belly, pulling itself through the dirt. My stomach churned. This wasn't a prank. That night, with a new phone and a new number that only my parents knew, I thought I'd finally be safe. I'd locked every door, every window, and even barricaded the front door with a heavy bookshelf. I sat in the dark, my ears straining for any sound. Just after midnight, the silence was broken. My new phone, resting on the coffee table, began to buzz. I stared at it in disbelief. Flashing on the screen, in glowing white letters, was my old number, the one I had just disconnected. I didn't answer. I couldn't. It went to voicemail. After what felt like an eternity, the notification popped up. One new voicemail. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the phone. I knew I shouldn't listen. I knew whatever was on there would only feed the terror that was already consuming me. But I had to know. I pressed play and put the phone to my ear. This time, there was no static, no scratching. It was crystal clear. It was the sound of my own voice, humming a tune I hadn't thought of in years. A lullaby my mother used to sing to me. But the humming was coming from inside my house. I could hear the faint echo of my own living room, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. It was humming right outside my bedroom door. Then, the humming stopped. There was a pause, a moment of suffocating silence, and then a new sound. A slow, deliberate creak, the sound of my bedroom doorknob slowly turning. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped in my throat. I was paralyzed, staring at the door, at the brass knob that was visibly, impossibly, turning. The voicemail continued. I heard a soft click as the latch disengaged. Then, a whisper, right into the microphone. A perfect imitation of my own voice, filled with a cold, hollow amusement. "Found you?" I don't remember how I got out. I think I scrambled out the bedroom window, cutting my hands on the rose bushes below. Justran. I ran through the dark woods, not looking back. The sounds of my own voice calling my name, echoing behind me, twisting and distorting into something monstrous. I never went back to that house. The police found it empty, my belongings untouched, except for my old, shattered phone lying on the living room floor. They told me there were no signs of a break-in. They said the footprints in the garden were probably just from a deer. They couldn't explain the voicemails. Sometimes, late at night, I still think I hear it. A faint humming just outside my window, or a phone ringing in the distance. I've moved 3 times, changed my number more times than I can count, but I know it's still out there. I know that thing that wore my voice like a costume is still looking for me. And I know that one day, my phone will ring, and my own name will appear on the screen. And this time, I'm afraid I might answer. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there. The forest holds secrets older than the trees themselves. Locals whisper about a guide named Silas, a man who knows the winter woods like the back of his hand. He's led countless groups through blizzards that would swallow you whole. But there's a chilling peculiarity about him. He never eats with his clients. Not a single bite. And those who've known him for decades swear he has aged a day since they first met him. They call him the Starving Guide. I decided to find out why. My name is Ethan, and I'm a journalist. I chase stories that live in the shadows, and Silas was my new obsession. I booked a spot on his next week-long trek into the biting heart of the northern wilderness. The moment I met him, I understood the whispers. His eyes were ancient, holding a depth that felt both wise and terrifyingly empty. His frame was lean, almost skeletal, yet he moved with an unnatural strength, his worn parka hanging off him like a shroud. The group consisted of myself, a young couple named Ben and Chloe, and an experienced hiker named Marcus. The first day was a breeze. Silas was a master of his craft, pointing out animal tracks, teaching us how to read the wind, and finding sheltered paths. He was quiet, but efficient. That evening, as we gathered around the crackling fire, the aroma of beef stew filled the air. We offered him a bowl, but he just shook his head, a faint, unsettling smile on his lips. "I prefer to eat alone," he said, his voice a low rasp, like dry leaves skittering across ice. He then disappeared into the darkness, just beyond the firelight's reach. The second night, the temperature plummeted. The wind howled like a hungry animal. We huddled closer to the fire, our breath turning to frost. Again, Silas refused food. This time, I noticed something else. As the wind whipped through the camp, he seemed to grow, stronger, more alert. His head would snap towards the darkness, as if listening to a conversation none of the rest of us could hear. Marcus, the veteran hiker, seemed to notice it too. He watched Silas with a wary, narrow-eyed gaze. By the third day, the atmosphere had shifted. The forest felt different, heavier. The usual chirps of winter birds were gone, replaced by an oppressive silence. We were deep in the wilderness now, miles from any road. That night, after another silent refusal of food, I couldn't sleep. I pretended to be asleep in my tent and watched Silas. He stood at the edge of the camp, his back to the fire, perfectly still for what felt like hours. He was looking up at the skeletal branches of the trees, his gaunt face pale in the moonlight. A low growl rumbled from his chest, a sound so primal it made the hair on my arms stand up. It wasn't human. The next morning, Ben and Chloe were on edge. They said they'd heard strange noises during the night, a scraping sound, like claws on rock, and a faint, high-pitched whistle on the wind. Silas just dismissed it as the forest settling, but his eyes, they were different. There was a glint in them now, a predatory hunger that hadn't been there before. He pushed us harder that day, his pace relentless. We were exhausted, but he seemed energized, invigorated by the biting cold and our growing fatigue. That night was the turning point. A blizzard hit, a whiteout so intense you couldn't see your own hands. We were trapped in our tents, the fabric groaning under the weight of the snow and the force of the wind. In the midst of the gale, I heard it, a scream. It was Chloe. I scrambled out of my tent, flashlight beam cutting a frantic path through the swirling snow. Ben was stumbling out of his tent, his face a mask of terror. "She's gone," he yelled over the storm. Something dragged her out. Marcus and I followed the tracks. They weren't human. They were long, impossibly thin, with deep claw marks gouged into the frozen earth. And next to them, chillingly, were Silas's boot prints. The tracks led away from camp, deeper into the storm. Ben was hysterical. He took her, That thing. It's him. Silas was nowhere to be found. The blizzard raged for another day. We were trapped, terrified, rationing what little food we had left. The hunger was a gnawing beast in our stomachs. When the storm finally broke, the world was silent and white. There was no sign of Chloe and no sign of Silas. Marcus's face grim looked at me. We have to get out of here. Now, we packed what we could and began the desperate trek back. We were weak, disoriented, and haunted by what had happened. On the second day of our retreat, we found something. Half buried in the snow was a tattered piece of red fabric from Chloe's jacket, and next to it a single, elongated footprint, frozen solid in the ice. The hunger I felt in my stomach was nothing compared to the cold dread that filled my soul. We finally stumbled out of the woods, frostbitten and traumatized, but alive. The authorities organized a search party, but they found nothing. No Chloe, no Silas. Officially, they were listed as missing, lost to the blizzard. But I knew the truth. Ben and Marcus knew it too. We had walked with a monster. Weeks later, I was back in the small town bordering the forest, trying to piece together the legend of Silas. I found an old library with town archives dating back over a century. Digging through dusty records, I found it. A faded newspaper clipping from 1898. It detailed a brutal winter where a trapping party went missing. Only one man survived, a guide who reportedly resorted to unspeakable acts to stay alive. They said the hunger changed him, cursed him to wander the forest forever, consumed by an eternal, insatiable appetite. The guide's name: Silas. The photo accompanying the article was grainy, but the face was unmistakable. It was him. The same hollow eyes, the same gaunt features. He hadn't aged a day in over 100 years. The starving guide wasn't just his nickname, it was his curse. He leads people into the wilderness, not just to guide them, but to feed off their fear, their exhaustion, and when the winter hunger becomes too great, 2 feet on team. He doesn't join his clients for meals because he's waiting for a different kind of feast. So if you ever find yourself in those northern woods and you meet a timeless guide who never eats, turn around and run. Run and don't look back, because the hunger of the Wendigo is patient and it is eternal. Thank you for listening. Remember to stay safe out there, and if you enjoyed this story, be sure to follow for more tales from the shadows. The city clock tower chimed midnight, its metallic clang echoing through the deserted streets. For the past 5 years, that sound has been my only companion on the night watch. My name is Arthur, and I patrol the quiet, affluent neighborhood of Crestwood Hills. It's usually a predictable gig. The rich sleep soundly, their mansions, like silent fortresses. But tonight was different. Tonight, the silence itself felt heavy, like a predator holding its breath. It started subtly. A week ago, I was on my usual route, passing the old Hemlock house at the end of Sycamore Lane. The house has been empty for years, a dark monolith against the manicured lawns. As my flashlight beam swept across its front porch, I saw a flicker of movement. I stopped, my heart giving a little thump. It was probably just a raccoon, Premeta told myself. But as I squinted, I saw a shape, tall and gaunt, melt back into the shadows of the porch. It was too large for a raccoon. Too human-like. I called out, but there was no answer. Shaking it off as a trick of the light, I continued my patrol, but an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. A few nights later, I saw it again. This time, it was across the street from the Miller residence. Mr. Miller leaves for his early morning flight every Tuesday at precisely 3:15 a.m. As his car's headlights disappeared down the road, I saw the same tall, gaunt figure step out from behind a large oak tree. It just stood there, watching the house, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It wasn't just observing, it was studying. I gripped my flashlight tighter, my knuckles white. I radioed it in as a potential prowler, but by the time a patrol car arrived, the figure was gone. They found nothing. My colleagues started giving me looks, the kind you give the old-timer who's seeing things. But I knew what I saw, and the incidents became more frequent and more unnerving. The entity, whatever it was, wasn't just lurking. It was learning. On Thursday night, Mrs. Gable always returns from her late-night book club at 11:45 p.m. I saw the figure crouched in the bushes opposite her driveway. The moment her car turned in, it slunk back into the darkness, silent as a phantom. It knew her schedule. It knew everyone's schedule. The most chilling part was the mimicry. A few nights ago, I heard a dog barking near the Petersons' house. They have a golden retriever named Buddy, a friendly but loud animal. But this bark, it was off. It was too rhythmic, too perfect. It was like a recording on a loop. I rounded the corner to see the tall, shadowy figure standing by their back fence, making the sound. It wasn't just a bark, it was an exact imitation of Buddy. The real Buddy was inside, whining nervously. The figure saw me, its head snapping in my direction. For a moment, I saw its eyes. 2 points of light that seemed to burn with cold intelligence. Then, it turned and vaulted the fence with an agility that wasn't human, disappearing into the woods behind the house. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a person. No human could move like that. The old stories my grandfather used to tell me, Tylees from the reservation whispered in hushed tones, came rushing back. Stories of skinwalkers, of malevolent beings who could take the form of animals and mimic human voices. He always said they were creatures of immense cunning, observers who studied their prey before striking. At the time, I dismissed them as campfire tales. Now, patrolling these silent streets, I wasn't so sure. I started keeping a detailed log. Every departure, every arrival, every strange noise, every fleeting glimpse of the lanky shadow. The pattern was undeniable. It was mapping the neighborhood's pulse, memorizing the rhythm of our lives. It knew when Mr. Harrison took his trash out at 5 a.m. It knew the exact moment the newspaper was delivered to the Chun's doorstep. It was like a predator studying a herd, waiting for the perfect moment to isolate its target. Tonight, the air is thick with anticipation. The midnight chime felt less like a greeting and more like a warning. I'm parked in my usual spot, watching the Hemlock House. My instincts scream that this is where it lairs, in the rotting heart of that abandoned mansion. A few minutes ago, I heard it, a soft whistling, carrying on the wind. It was the tune Mr. Davies always whistles when he walks his dog before bed. But Mr. Davies moved out of state 2 months ago. The sound was coming from the second-floor window of the Hemlock House. The whistling stopped, replaced by a new sound, a gentle, feminine humming. I recognize it instantly. It's the lullaby Mrs. Gable hums to her grandchild when she babysits on weekends. My hands are slick with sweat. It's not just mimicking sounds anymore. It's using them. It's luring, testing, probing for a weakness. Then, a voice cuts through the night, making every hair on my body stand on end. Arthur, is everything all right out there? It's my supervisor's voice, coming from the direction of the Hemlock House. But my radio is silent. My supervisor is miles away, at the central office. The voice is a perfect imitation, laced with just the right amount of concern. It knows my name. It knows my supervisor's voice. It's been watching me, too. I reach for my radio, my hand trembling. Dispatch, I have a situation at the old Hemlock property on Sycamore. I need backup. Now. I don't wait for a reply. I kill the engine, plunging my car into darkness. The voice comes again, closer this time, just outside my window. Arthur, why did you do that? I just wanted to talk. It's no longer my supervisor's voice. It's a twisted, guttural version of my own. My heart is a drum against my ribs. I can see its silhouette in my side mirror, a distorted, elongated parody of a human form, unfolding itself from the shadows. It's tapping on the glass now, a slow, deliberate rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. The same rhythm I use when I knock on a resident's door to check on a tripped alarm. It learned my schedule. It learned my voice. It learned my knock. And now, it's here for me. I'm staring into the mirror, at the reflection of the thing wearing my life like a costume. And I realize the patrol car isn't a shield. It's a cage. and I'm locked inside with the monster. The tapping gets louder, more insistent, and through the distorted voice, it whispers a question that freezes my soul. Aren't you going to let me in? Have you ever seen something so out of place that it makes the hairs on your arms stand up? That's what started it all for me. Something that defied every law of nature I knew. My name is Alex, and I'm a park ranger up in the northern reaches of Minnesota. I've spent my entire life in these woods. I know the rhythm of the seasons like the back of my hand. I know how the forest breathes, how it wakes in the spring and settles for its long sleep in the winter. But last year, something went wrong. The rhythm broke. The winter had been brutal, one for the record books. Snow buried everything under a thick, white blanket. When spring finally arrived, it was a relief. We all felt deep in our bones. The thaw was quick. Creeks swelled, the ground softened, and the first green shoots began to push through the matted leaves. Within weeks, the forest was alive again. Except for one spot. It was on a routine patrol deep in the backcountry, an area rarely visited that I first saw it. On a north-facing slope, nestled between ancient pines, was a patch of snow. It wasn't large, maybe 10 feet across, and perfectly circular, but it was May. The temperature was pushing 60 degrees. There shouldn't have been any snow left, especially not a pristine, untouched circle like this. I remember getting off my ATV, my boots sinking into the soft, damp earth. But as I got closer to the patch, the ground became strangely firm, almost frozen. The air grew cold, a biting, unnatural chill that had no business being there on a mild spring day. My dog, a boisterous husky mix named Bear, who usually plunged headfirst into any snowdrift, stopped dead. He whined, his hackles raised, and refused to go a step further. That was the first red flag. Bear was afraid of nothing. I cautiously approached the edge of the snow. It wasn't melting. Not a single drop of water ran from its edges. The surface was smooth, almost like polished marble, without a single footprint, not even from a bird or a squirrel. Animals were giving it a wide berth. The usual forest chattered the birds, the insects, the rustle of small creatures was gone. Here, there was only a deep, profound silence that felt heavy, like a held breath. I poked the snow with a long branch. It was solid, hard as ice. It felt ancient, wrong. A shiva and knots from the cold ran down my spine. I marked the location on my GPS and decided to come back. I told myself it was a geological anomaly, some strange pocket of permafrost. I tried to reason it away, but the image of Bear's terror and that oppressive silence stuck with me. I checked on the patch every week. June came, and the forest was in full summer bloom. Temperatures climbed into the 80s. Wildflowers painted the meadows, and the trees were lush and green. But the snow patch remained, unchanged, unmelted. The circle of cold and silence around it seemed to grow wider. The deer trails now diverted in a wide arc around the slope. The birds nested elsewhere. It was a dead zone, a blight on the vibrant life of the forest. One evening, I was talking to an old-timer in town, a man named Silas, whose family had lived in the area for generations. I mentioned this strange patch of snow, trying to sound casual. His friendly demeanor vanished. He put down his coffee cup and looked at me with a gravity that chilled me to the bone. "Stay away from it, Alex," he said, his voice low. "Some things are best left undisturbed. That isn't snow. It's a grave marker." He wouldn't say more, just shook his head and warned me again to let it be. His words echoed the whispers of old legends I'd heard, but always dismissed as campfire stories. Tales of a spirit, born of hunger and cold, an entity that stalked the winter woods. The Wendigo. The legends said it was a creature of eternal winter, its heart a shard of ice. They said his presence could freeze the ground in the middle of summer. I'd always laughed at those stories. I wasn't laughing anymore. July brought a sweltering heatwave. The rest of the forest suffered under the sun, but the snow patch endured. My curiosity, now laced with a heavy dose of fear, got the better of me. I had to know what was going on. One evening, as dusk began to settle, I decided to set up a trail camera. I wanted to see what, if anything, happened at that spot during the night. Setting up the camera was one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. The cold was so intense now, it felt like it was leaching the warmth from my body. The silence was absolute. I worked quickly, my fingers fumbling with the straps. I felt watched. Every snap of a twig in the distant woods sounded like a footstep. I kept glancing over my shoulder, my heart pounding against my ribs, expecting to see something standing there in the deepening shadows between the trees. I practically ran back to my ATV, leaving the unblinking eye of the camera to stand guard. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Silas's words. It's a grave marker. What was buried there? Or more accurately, what was being kept there? The Wendigo legends often spoke of the creature burying its victims in the snow to preserve them. The idea was so monstrous, so primal. It made my stomach turn. Was this patch of snow a larder for some unspeakable entity? The next day, I couldn't wait. I rode out early, the morning mist still clinging to the forest floor. As I approached the slope, I knew something had changed. The cold was still there, but the silence was different. It was charged, expectant. I retrieved the camera, my hands shaking slightly. I didn't check the footage there. I wanted to be back in the relative safety of my station, with solid walls around me. Back in my office, I plugged the memory card into my laptop. The first few hours of footage showed nothing but the unchanging circle of snow under the moonlight. Then, just after midnight, the timestamp showed a flicker. Distortion. The image seemed to waver, like heat acid, but it was emanating from the snow. Slowly, a mist began to rise from the center of the patch. It wasn't steam from melting. It was a thick, dark vapor that swirled and coiled in the frigid air. My breath caught in my throat. The mist grew, coalescing into a tall, impossibly thin shape. It was hard to make out details, more a suggestion of a form than a solid being. It was skeletal, elongated, with limbs that were too long, too spindly. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, stepping out of the snow patch and onto the forest floor, where its feet touched the ground. A thin layer of frost instantly bloomed on the leaves and dirt. It turned its head. I couldn't see a face, just a suggestion of one deep, hollow sockets where eyes should be. It seemed to look directly at the camera. A wave of static washed over the screen, and for a split second, the image cleared. I saw it. I saw the gaunt, skull-like face, the stretched, gray skin over sharp bones, the jagged teeth in a lipless mouth. It was a visage of pure, unending hunger. Then the footage cut to black. The camera had died. I threw the laptop away from me, my chair screeching back against the floor. It was real. The stories, the legends, they were all real. The thing from the camera was here, in my woods. The snow wasn't a grave marker. It was a doorway, or an anchor, tethering that thing to this place. Panic set in. I had to warn people, but who would believe me? They'd think I was crazy. I thought of Silas. He knew. He had to know more. I drove to his house, my mind racine. The sun was high in the sky, but I felt no warmth. All I could feel was the memory of that unnatural cold and the image of that hollow, starving face. When I showed Silas the footage, he didn't look surprised. He just looked weary, sad. He told me the story his grandfather had told him. 100 years ago, during a particularly harsh winter, a trapper had been lost in the woods. Driven mad by starvation, he committed a terrible act, consuming his own companion to survive. In doing so, he had invited the spirit of the Wendigo to possess him. He became the monster. The tribe elders at the time managed to track and subdue the creature, but it couldn't be killed. It was a spirit of winter, and as long as hunger and cold existed, it would exist. So they performed a ritual, binding it to the place where its humanity died, trapping it beneath a seal of enchanted ice that would never melt, holding the monster in a frozen slumber, the patch of snow. But some things weakened the seal, Silas said, his voice grim. The creature is stirring. It's testing its prison. That mist you saw, ... It's a projection, a shadow of its true self. It's not fully free yet, but it's trying to be. He explained that the Wendigo gains power from fear and despair. My obsession with the snow, my fear I had been feeding it, helping it wake up. We had to reinforce the seal. Silas knew the old words, the old ways. The ritual required items of warmth and life ash from a sacred fire, seeds from the first spring plants, and an offering given freely, without fear. That night, under a new moon, we returned to the snow patch. The cold was worse than ever, a physical presence that pushed against us. The air was thick with a sense of malice. I could almost hear it, a faint, high-pitched whining sound, like wind through a crack, the sound of a starving thing. My fear was a living entity inside my chest, but I thought of Silas's words. I focused on my duty as a ranger, on protecting this forest, on warmth, on life. Silas began to chant in the old language, his voice a steady, powerful anchor in the oppressive silence. I walked the perimeter of the snow, spreading the ash and the seeds. As Silas's chant reached its crescendo, he motioned to me. The final offering. I held out my hand, holding a small, smooth stone I had carried since I was a child. A stone my father had given me for luck, a symbol of home, of safety. I placed it gently in the center of the snow patch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the whining sound intensified into a horrible, piercing shriek that seemed to come from inside my own head. A blast of Arctic air erupted from the snow, throwing us backward. The entire forest seemed to groan. But then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The unholy cold receded, replaced by the normal cool of the night air. The oppressive silence broke. Somewhere nearby, a cricket chirped, then another. The forest was breathing again. The snow patch is still there. I check on it sometimes, from a distance. The circle of frostbitten ground around it has shrunk. I've even seen deer tracks near the edge, hesitant but closer than before. Silas says the seal is holding, for now, but he warned me the Wendigo is patient. It has been trapped for a century. It can wait for another. It only needs one person, lost in the cold, lost in hunger, to give in to despair. It only needs one moment of weakness to be free again. I still patrol these woods, but I do it with a new respect, a new fear, because I know that some legends are true, and that deep in the forest, a patch of snow that will never melt, guards a hunger that will never die. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tailies from the edge of the map. Stay safe out there. The old Route 66 hotel wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a relic, a stubborn ghost of the past clinging to the side of a forgotten highway. I was on a cross-country drive, and my GPS had died hours ago. The neon sign flickering like a dying heartbeat was the first sign of civilization I'd seen since sunset. The place was called the Coyote's Rest, and the name felt both quaint and a little unsettling. The lobby was empty, save for a stoic man behind the counter, with eyes that seemed to have seen a century of sunrises and sunsets over the desert. He slid a tarnished brass key across the worn wooden counter without a word. Room 213. The hallway was long and dim, the floral wallpaper peeling at the edges. My room was at the very end. The air inside was thick and musty, heavy with the scent of old dust and something else. Something faintly animal, like dump fur. I chalked it up to the hotel's age and the desert outside. I was exhausted, so I dropped my bag, locked the door, and fell onto the lumpy mattress. Sleep came quickly, but it was a restless, dream-filled sleep. I dreamt of scratching sounds, not from the walls, but from deep inside my own chest. I woke up with a jolt. The room was pitch black, the kind of absolute darkness that presses in on you. But it wasn't the darkness that woke me. It was the silence, the usual hum of the old building, the creaks and groans of its ancient bones, was gone. It was a dead waiting silence, and then it happened. A single, earth-shattering boom. It wasn't one door. It was every door. Every single door in that long, dark hallway slammed shut at the exact same instant. The sound was so violent, so perfectly synchronized. It vibrated through the floor, up the bed frame, and into my very bones. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat bolt upright, straining my ears in the suffocating silence that followed. There were no footsteps, no voices, no panicked guests shouting. Nothing. Just the echo of that impossible, unified slam. It was as if the hotel itself had snapped its jaw shut. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at my skin. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't the wind. This was something deliberate, something organized. Slowly, I slid out of bed. The floorboards didn't even creak. It was like the whole building was holding its breath. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against the cool wood. Silence. I fumbled for the peephole, my hands shaking so badly I could barely find it. I squinted, my eye adjusting to the dim, amber glow of the emergency lights in the hall. The hallway was empty. All the doors were closed, perfectly aligned. It looked normal, except for the feeling that something was standing just out of sight, just around the corner, watching, waiting. I backed away from the door, my breath catching in my throat. That's when I heard it. A soft, wet scratching sound. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the window. My window. On the second floor. My blood ran cold. The curtains were drawn, thank God, but the sound was unmistakable. It was the sound of long, sharp claws, methodically scraping against the glass, slow and rhythmic. Scrape, pause, scrape, pause. It was testing it, seeing if it would give. I couldn't move. I was frozen in the center of the room, a statue carved from pure terror. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was even worse. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, every nerve screaming. Then, a new sound began, a low, guttural clicking. It was a vocalization, but not one I'd ever heard from a person or an animal. It was complex, intelligent, and utterly alien. It sounded like it was right outside the pane of glass, whispering its terrible language to the night. The clicking morphed into something else. It started to mimic sounds. First, it was the faint, distant cry of a coyote. But it was wrong. The pitch was too high, the rhythm unnatural. Then, it changed to the sound of a woman weeping softly. The sound was so full of sorrow it almost made me want to open the curtain to help. But the logical part of my brain, the part that was screaming for survival, knew. It knew this was a lure, a trap. The weeping stopped, and a new voice emerged from the darkness outside my window. It was my voice. Perfectly. It was a perfect mimicry of my own voice, whispering a single phrase over and over. Let me in. I'm so cold. Please, let me in. It was my voice, but it was hollow, empty of life. Hearing my own words spoken by that thing outside was the most terrifying moment of my life. It knew me. It was learning me. I scrambled backward, tripping over my bag and landing hard on the floor. I didn't care. I crab-walked into the corner of the room, as far from the window and the door as I could get, pulling the thin bedspread over my head like a child. The voice outside my window stopped. The scratching didn't return. For a long time, there was only the sound of my own ragged breathing and the frantic drumming of my heart. I stayed like that, huddled in the corner, until the first hint of gray dawn seeped through the edges of the thick curtains. The morning light felt like a pardon. With the sun up, the fear didn't disappear, but it receded, becoming a manageable, icy knot in my stomach. I waited until the sun was fully in the sky before I dared to move. I packed my bag in a frenzy, my eyes darting between the door and the window. I didn't check the peephole. I didn't look out the window. I just wanted out. I wrenched the door open and practically sprinted down the hallway. All the doors were still closed. The hotel was as silent as a tomb. When I burst into the lobby, the same stoic man was behind the counter, polishing a glass with a slow, deliberate motion. He didn't look up as I slammed the key onto the counter. He just stopped polishing and looked at it. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. His voice was flat, devoid of any curiosity. "Something wrong with the room?" I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, my throat tight. I turned to leave, my hand on the heavy glass door of the entrance. "The coyotes were loud last night," he said, his voice stopping me in my tracks. I turned back to look at him. He still hadn't looked up from his glass. They get brave in the dark. Try to sound like things they ain't. Try to get inside, where it's warm. He finally lifted his head, and his ancient eyes met mine. There was no sympathy in them, only a deep, unsettling understanding. "You're lucky," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Some doors are meant to stay closed." I didn't need another warning. I pushed the door open and ran to my car, not looking back. As primeras pet Hawaii, the hotel shrinking in my rearview mirror. I knew I hadn't just stayed in a rundown motel. I had spent the night in a cage, and something had been rattling the bars, testing the locks, and whispering my name. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there. My buddy Ryan always bragged about Minnesota's trails, especially the ones near his cabin deep in the woods. He said the dawn light there was magical. So, last fall, I finally took him up on his offer. He woke me up way before sunrise, insisting the best views were right as the day broke. The air was sharp and cold, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. We set off, our headlamps cutting weak beams through the pre-dawn gloom. The trail was narrow, winding through thick stands of birch and pine. Ryan was a few paces ahead, his breath pluming in the cold air. For the first half hour, the only sounds were our footsteps crunching on fallen leaves and the distant call of an owl. It was peaceful, almost serene. But as the sky began to lighten from inky black to a deep, bruised purple, a strange feeling crept over me. A feeling of being watched. I shook it off, blaming the early hour and the unfamiliar woods. I called out to Ryan, "Hey, how much further to this amazing view?" He turned, a wide grin on his face. "Almost there, city boy." "Just past this next ridge." As he turned back, I saw it, just for a second, at the edge of my headlamp's beam. A figure, impossibly tall and gaunt, standing between two thick pine trees. It was there, and then it wasn't. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Ryan, did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He stopped and looked back, his expression puzzled. "See? What a deer?" I described what I thought I saw. The unnerving height, the skeletal frame. Ryan laughed, but it sounded a little forced. "Dude, it's just the trees playing tricks on your eyes. The shadows get weird out here at this hour." He was probably right. I was tired, and my imagination was running wild. We kept walking, but the feeling of being watched intensified. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. The sky was brighter now, a palette of soft pinks and oranges filtering through the canopy. We reached a small clearing, and Ryan pointed. "See? Told you it was worth it." The view was incredible. A valley blanketed in mist with the rising sun painting the horizon. But I couldn't appreciate it. My eyes were scanning the tree line, searching for something. That's when I saw it again. This time, it was closer. On the other side of the clearing, it stood partially obscured by a large oak. It was emaciated, its limbs too long, its skin the color of old bone. It seemed to have antlers, or maybe they were just twisted branches behind its head. It didn't move, just stood there, watching us. I grabbed Ryan's arm, my hand shaking. "There. Look. Right there." This time, he saw it too. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of pure terror. What is that?" he stammered. The figure took a step out from behind the tree. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, its long arms dangling at its sides. It was so thin it looked like a skeleton draped in dried skin. And its head, it was like a deer skull, but elongated wrong. It tilted its head, and a sound like grinding rocks echoed through the clearing. "We need to go," Ryan whispered, his voice tight with panic. Now. Slowly, we started backing away, never taking our eyes off the creature. It watched it. Its head swiveling to follow our movement. We turned and broke into a run, crashing through the underbrush, ignoring the trail. Branches whipped at our faces, and roots threatened to trip us with every step. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it, a scraping, dragging sound, keeping pace with us just behind the veil of trees. We ran blindly, fueled by sheer terror. My lungs burned, and my legs felt like lead. Every time I thought we might have lost it, I had to catch a glimpse of it out of the corner of my eye. A flash of pale bone through the trees, a flicker of movement that was too fast, too unnatural. It was toying with us, appearing and disappearing, always just out of sight, but letting us know it was there. The sound of its movement changed. It wasn't just scraping anymore. It was a rhythmic thudding, as if it was running on all fours. The sound was getting closer. Ryan screamed, a raw, guttural sound of fear. I risked a glance over my shoulder and my blood ran cold. It was loping through the woods, its form a nightmarish blur of tangled limbs and bone, closing the distance at an alarming speed. It wasn't just following, it was hunting. We scrambled down a steep, muddy embankment, sliding and tumbling to the bottom. We were in a ravine, a shallow creek, babbling over rocks. "This way," Ryan yelled, splashing through the icy water. We followed the creek, hoping the water would cover our tracks or confuse it. The sun was fully up now, but the dense canopy of the ravine kept it dim and shadowy. The air felt heavy, charged with a primal dread. For a while, there was silence, only the sound of our ragged breaths and the splashing of our feet in the water. Maybe we'd lost it. Maybe the water worked. We slowed to a walk, trying to catch our breath, our bodies trembling from adrenaline and cold. We had no idea where we were. Ryan pulled out his phone, but there was no signal. We were completely lost. Just as a sliver of hope began to return, we heard a sound from above us, on the ridge of the ravine, a soft cleak like a hoof on stone. We froze, looking up. There it was, silhouetted against the morning sky. It stood on the edge of the ravine, looking down at us. It was impossibly still. It just watched. It hadn't been chasing us to catch us. Not yet. It was enjoying the hunt. It knew we were trapped. A voice, dry and raspy like dead leaves skittering across pavement, echoed in my head. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears, but a thought that wasn't my own. So, hungry, my mind raylit. The legend Ryan had once told me as a campfire story, the story of the Wendigo, the spirit of endless hunger, came crashing back into my mind. The story of a creature that could mimic voices and drive its prey mad with fear before the final chase. We didn't wait. We plunged back into the creek, running again, running for our lives. The ravine twisted and turned, and at every bend, I expected to see it waiting for us. We'd hear it, sometimes on the left ridge, sometimes on the right. It was flanking us, herding us. The voice would whisper in our minds, fragments of our own fears spoken back to us. "No one can hear you. You're so far from home." We finally stumbled out of the ravine and onto a dirt logging road. We were exhausted, covered in mud, and shaken uncontrollably. We looked back, but the woods were silent. There was no sign of the creature. We ran down the road, not knowing where it led, just knowing it was away from those woods. After what felt like an eternity, we heard the sound of an engine, a pickup truck. An old logger on his way to work. He stopped, his eyes wide at the sight of us. We never told him the full story. We just said we got lost, that an animal had spooked us. I don't think he would have believed us anyway. He drove us back to the main road, and we found our way back to Ryan's cabin. We packed our things in silence and left immediately. We didn't stop driving until we were hundreds of miles away from those Minnesota woods. I still have nightmares about it. I see that tall, skeletal figure standing between the trees, its deer skull head tilted to the side. I hear that dry, rasping voice in my mind. Ryan and I don't talk about it. We don't talk much at all anymore. There's an understanding between us, a shared trauma that needs no words. I'll never go hiking at dawn again. Some things are better left unseen in the shadows, and some legends are real, and they're hungry. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had a similar experience in the deep woods, let me know in the comments. Stay safe out there, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the edge of the map. Have you ever felt a fear so deep it rewrites your mind? A dread that seeps into your bones, not from what you see, but from what you can't. Tonight, we're not just talking about strange lights or fleeting shadows. We re-delving into the most insidious horror of Skinwalker Ranch, the psychological warfare it wages on those who dare to stay too long. Our story begins with a team of 4 seasoned paranormal investigators. Let's call their lead investigator Alex. He was a skeptic, a man who built his career on debunking hoaxes. With him were Maya, a sensitive with a knack for picking up emotional residue. Ben, the tech guru, armed with every sensor imaginable. And Liam, the group's historian and documentarian. They arrived at the ranch on a crisp autumn afternoon, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. The air was still, silent, almost too silent. Their first few days were uneventful. Ben's equipment registered some odd magnetic fluctuations around Homestead 2, but nothing conclusive. Maya felt a persistent hum of anxiety in the air, like the static before a storm, but she couldn't pinpoint its source. Alex, ever the pragmatist, was growing impatient, chalking it up to suggestion and the ranch's reputation. "It's just a place," he'd say, tapping his pen against his notepad. "A place with a lot of stories." The shift began on the 5th night. It wasn't a sudden event. It was a slow, creeping rot. It started with Ben. He became obsessed with a low-frequency hum his parabolic microphone was picking up, a sound no one else could hear. He'd sit for hours, headphones clamped on, face pale, muttering about patterns in the static. He stopped eating. He barely slept. He claimed the sound was talking to him, not in words, but in feelings. It was showing him things, moments of deep, personal failure and regret, replayed on a loop in his mind's eye. Then came Liam. The historian, the man of facts and figures, began having crippling panic attacks. They'd come out of nowhere. One minute he'd be cataloging their findings, the next he'd be on the floor, gasping for air, his eyes wide with a terror he couldn't name. He described a feeling of being watched, not by a person, but by the land itself. He felt as if the rocks, the dry soil, the very air, held a malevolent intelligence that was judging him, peeling back the layers of his sanity one by one. He started seeing movements at the edge of his vision distortions, like heat haze that would twist into vaguely humanoid shapes before vanishing when he turned to look. Maya, the sensitive, was arguably the worst off. The ambient anxiety she'd felt had intensified into a crushing wave of despair. She'd burst into tears without reason, overwhelmed by a grief that wasn't hers. She said the ranch was a repository of pain, a place that fed on negative emotions. At night, she dreamed of whispers in a language she didn't understand, the voices ancient and guttural. She'd wake up, convinced something had been in the room with her, a cold presence that left the scent of ozone and dry earth in its wake. She started drawing the same symbol over and over in her notebook, a twisted, spiral-like shape with 3 points. She didn't know why. Alex tried to hold it all together. He was their leader, the rock. But even the rock was beginning to crack. He didn't hear voices or see shadows. His affliction was more subtle, more poisonous. Paranoia began to take root in his mind. He started to doubt his team. He'd review Ben's audio logs, convinced his tech expert was fabricating the hum. He'd watch Liam during his panic attacks with a cold, analytical detachment, wondering if he was faking it for attention. He became suspicious of Maya, believing her emotional episodes were a ploy to derail the investigation. The man who came to debunk the ranch was now seeing conspiracies in the faces of his closest colleagues. He'd lock himself in their RV for hours, poring over the footage, rewatching every frame, searching for some trick, some lie. The camaraderie that had defined their team for years evaporated, replaced by a tense, ugly silence. They were four strangers, isolated by their own private torments, trapped together in a place that seemed to be actively trying to break them apart. The turning point came on their 10th and final night. A storm rolled in, a violent, unnatural squall that wasn't on any forecast. The wind howled like a starving animal, and the rain hammered against their RV. All of their equipment went haywire simultaneously. Screens filled with static, batteries drained in an instant, and every alarm blared at once. In the chaos, Ben ripped off his headphones, his eyes wild. "It's here," he screamed over the din. "It wants us to see." At that moment, a brilliant blue light pulsed from the direction of the mesa, bathing the entire ranch in an ethereal glow. It wasn't lightning. It was silent, cold, and utterly terrifying. In that flash of blue light, Alex saw it. For just a second, standing outside the RV's window, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to be made of shifting shadows and distorted limbs. It had no face, only a void. But Alex felt its gaze, an ancient, predatory intelligence that saw right through him, into the darkest corners of his soul. In that instant, understood, the ranch wasn't just haunted, it was a predator. And its prey wasn't your body, it was your mind. The light vanished, plunging them back into darkness and the cacophony of their failing equipment. The spell was broken. Liam was sobbing, huddled in a corner. Maya was chanting softly, her eyes shut tight. Ben was rocking back and forth, unresponsive. And Alex was frozen. The image of that faceless entity burned into his brain. He finally knew the true horror of Skinwalker Ranch. It doesn't need to touch you to destroy you. It just needs you to be there. It waits, it watches, and it slowly, patiently, unravels you from the inside out. They packed up in a frenzy as soon as the storm broke at dawn, not speaking a word. They left thousands of dollars of equipment behind. They just had to get away. They drove in silence for hours, each of them forever changed, carrying a piece of the ranch's oppressive darkness with them. Months later, they tried to debrief. Ben had to be hospitalized for acute psychosis. Liam developed a severe agoraphobia and refused to leave his house. Maya quit paranormal investigation entirely, seeking solace in a quiet, secluded life still haunted by nightmares of that three-pointed spiral. And Alex the skeptic, he never published their findings. He couldn't. How do you document a feeling? How do you provide evidence for a fear that consumes your sanity? The greatest trick the entity of Skinwalker Ranch ever pulled wasn't appearing in a photograph. It was convincing the world, and even its most ardent investigators, that maybe, just maybe, it was all in their heads. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this dive into the psychological terror of the ranch, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more unsettling tales. Stay safe out there, and never underestimate the power of a place that feels wrong. Wrong. The old-timers in Hemlock Creek had a saying: every hearth has its shadow, and every home has its cold room. I never understood it, not until I moved there. I bought the old miller's house on the edge of town, a steal of a deal that seemed good to be true. And as it turns out, it was the real estate agent, a man with eyes that never quite met mine, glossed over the oddities. Just a drafty old place, he'd said with a wave of his hand. But this was no draft. It was a room, the small study at the back of the house, that was locked in a perpetual winter. I first noticed it on moving day. It was late August, the kind of sweltering heat that makes the air thick and heavy. But when I pushed open the study door, a blast of frigid air hit me so hard it stole my breath. It was like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Frost laced the window panes, and my breath plumed in front of my face. I checked the vents all closed. The window was sealed shut, painted over years ago. I cranked the thermostat up to its highest setting, the furnace groaning in protest. The rest of the house became an oven, but that room remained an icebox. Curiosity got the better of me. I started asking around town. At first, people were cagey, changing the subject, their smiles tight and unnatural. But after a few weeks of buying my groceries at the local market and sharing a coffee at the town's only diner, the whispers started. I learned I wasn't special. Every single building in Hemlock Creek had one. The library had a cold corner in the archives. The town hall had a cold records room. The diner's pantry had a spot where the flour sacks were always stiffed with frost. Each home, new or old, had its own pocket of unnatural cold. It was a local legend, they said. A curse. They called it the Hunger's Breath. The story went that generations ago, a terrible famine had struck the region during a brutal, never-ending winter. The settlers were isolated, cut off by mountains of snow. As desperation grew, so did a dark, unspeakable hunger. The legend spoke of a man, driven mad by starvation, who resorted to the ultimate taboo. He didn't just survive, he became something else. Something that was no longer human. Something that was forever cold, forever hungry. A Wendigo, they said the creature never truly left. It couldn't. Its essence had seeped into the very soil of Hemlock Creek, a permanent stain on the land. The cold rooms were the places where its presence was strongest, where its spectral breath still lingered, a constant, chilling reminder of that winter of endless hunger. People learned to live with it. They boarded up the rooms, sealed them off, and pretended they didn't exist. It was an unspoken rule. You don't use the cold room. You don't investigate it. You just ignore it. But I wasn't from Hemlock Creek. I was a journalist, a skeptic. I didn't believe in curses or monsters. I believed in rational explanations, faulty insulation, strange geological formations, unique air pressure systems. I was determined to debunk the myth. I bought space heaters, industrial-grade ones. I lined the walls with thermal insulation. I even brought in a contractor from the next state over, a guy who laughed when I told him the local lore. He spent a day in the study, his tools spread across the floor. He used thermal cameras, pressure gauges, everything. The readings made no sense. The temperature inside the room was a stable -10 degrees Celsius, while the wall's exterior surface was a balmy 30. There was no source, no explanation. By the end of the day, the contractor wasn't laughing anymore. He packed his tools, his face pale, and told me, "There's something wrong with this place." Not the house, the land. He refused payment and left without another word. That night, the fear started to creep in. The house, which had once felt like a bargain, now felt like a trap. The silence was heavier, filled with an unseen weight. I found myself listening, not for the creaks of an old house, but for something else. A faint scratching sound seemed to come from within the walls of the cold room. It was rhythmic, like fingernails dragging on wood. And then there was the smell. A faint, cloying odor started to seep from under the door. It smelled of pine needles and damp earth and something else. Something metallic and vaguely sweet, like old meat left in a freezer too long. I started having nightmares. Visions of a tall, emaciated figure moving through a snow-covered forest. Its limbs too long, its head crowned with antlers. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait, and its eyes burned with a cold, blue light. Into dreams I was running, but my legs were heavy, stuck in deep snow, and always I could hear a whisper on the wind, a single word repeated over and over again. Hungry. I decided to leave the room alone. I locked the door, stuffed a towel under it, and tried to forget. But the cold seemed to spread. The hallway outside the study became chilly. The doorknob was always slick with condensation. The scratching became louder, more insistent. Sometimes I'd hear a low groan, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very foundation of the house. It was the sound of a stomach rumbling, a deep, cavernous, and utterly insatiable hunger. One evening, a blizzard hit. The snow came down in a thick, white curtain, burying the town. The power went out. I was plunged into darkness, armed with only a few candles and a dying flashlight. The house was dead silent except for the howling wind and the scratching from the cold room. Only now, it didn't sound like scratching. It sounded like something was trying to dig its way out. A frantic, desperate clawing. Then I heard a new sound, a voice. It was a whisper, seeming to come from all around me. But its source was clearly that room. It was thin and reedy, like the wind whistling through a crack. It was my name, Michael. it whispered. So cold. So hungry. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a presence anymore. Eat. New. Me. I huddled in the living room, as far from the study as I could get, my heart hammering against my ribs. The temperature in the house plummeted. My breath started to fog. The candlelight flickered as if a cold draft was sweeping through the sealed room. The scratching stopped. A deafening silence fell, broken only by my own ragged breathing. And then, a loud crack echoed through the house. The sound of splintering wood. It came from the study door. Another crack, louder this time. Something was breaking through. I grabbed my car keys and a coat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely function. I wasn't going to stay here. I wasn't going to become another local legend. As I fumbled with the front door lock, I heard it. The study door finally gave way with a sickening crunch. Heavy, slow footsteps began to drag across the floorboards. They were deliberate, It knew I had nowhere to go. The blizzard was a wall of white. The town was a prison. The footsteps stopped just behind me. I could feel it. A wave of absolute, soul-crushing cold washed over my back. The air grew thick with that smell of decay and frozen earth. I didn't dare turn around. I could feel its gaze on me. A physical pressure. The whisper came again, no longer from the room, but right behind my ear. It was a dry, rasping sound. The voice of endless winter and bottomless starvation. "You can't leave," it hissed. "You're home now." And I'm so hungry. I don't remember getting the door open. I don't remember running to my car. My next memory is of sliding into a ditch on the edge of town. The engine dead. The blizzard raging around me. I abandoned the car, and I ran. I ran through snow up to my waist, fueled by pure terror, not daring to look back. Primera made out. I don't know how. I never went back for my things. I left everything in that house, in that town. Sometimes, late at night, when the winter wind howls outside my window, I feel a phantom chill. I find myself checking the thermostat, making sure the heat is on. And I think about Hemlock Creek, a town held in the grip of an ancient cold. I think about the people who live there, pretending not to notice the cold rooms in their homes, pretending not to hear the whispers of the hunger's breath. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to the bone, that the thing in my house is still there, waiting, and it's still hungry. The silence of the deep woods at night is something you never really get used to. It's not just quiet, it's heavy. You can feel it pressing in on you. My name is Mark, and I was part of a 4-man search and rescue team. We were on what was supposed to be a routine patrol, checking some old trails deep in a national forest known for its strange disappearances. It was me, Dave, Sam, and our team lead, Ben. The night was moonless, and our headlamps cut sharp, lonely beams through the thick, ancient trees. We'd been walking for about 3 hours, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves under our boots and the occasional hoot of an owl. That's when Sam suddenly stopped, Ehus Frus holding up a hand. We all stopped behind him, instantly on alert. "What is it?" Ben whispered, his voice tight. Sam didn't answer right away. He just slowly raised his headlamp, pointing it up into the canopy of a massive oak tree about 50 yards ahead. At first, I saw nothing but leaves and branches. Then, I saw them. 2 points of light, shining back at us. They weren't the soft, reflective glow of a raccoon or an owl. This was different. It was a direct, intelligent shine, like tiny, bright embers floating in the dark. And they were high. Way too high for any normal animal. They had to be at least 15, maybe 20 feet up. "What is that?" Dave murmured, his voice trembling slightly. No one had an answer. The eyes just watched us, unblinking. There was a stillness to them, a predatory patience that sent a cold spike of fear right through my chest. Ben, ever the professional, raised his radio. "Base, this is Patrol 1. We have a visual on something unusual. Stand by." As Ben spoke, the eyes blinked. It was a slow, deliberate blink, and then they were gone. just vanished. We all stood there, our lights frantically scanning the branches where they'd been. Nothing. It was like they had just dissolved into the darkness. A heavy, nervous silence fell over our group. Sam finally lowered his light, his face pale in the glow. "Did you guys see that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. They were too far apart to be an animal, and too high. We tried to rationalize it, a trick of the light, maybe some strange reflection, but we all knew what we saw. The feeling in the air had changed. The woods no longer felt empty. They felt like we were being watched. Ben made the call. "All right, team. Let's keep moving, but stay sharp." Eyes open, we continued on, but the easy rhythm of our patrol was gone. Now, every shadow seemed to move. Every rustle of leaves made us jump. Our headlamps were constantly darting up into the trees. About 20 minutes later, we heard it, a sound from behind us, off the trail. It was a soft snap, like a dry twig breaking under a heavy foot. We all spun around, light sweeping the undergrowth. Again, nothing. Probably just a deer, Dave said, though he didn't sound convinced. But the sound wasn't like a deer. It was too careful, too stealthy. It felt like something was following us, shadowing our every move, staying just out of sight. Ben motioned for us to stop again. He held a finger to his lips, signaling for absolute silence. We cut our lights and stood in the suffocating darkness, listening. For a full minute, there was nothing but the sound of our own ragged breathing. Then we heard it again, closer this time. A soft, shuffling sound in the leaf litter. It was moving parallel to us, keeping pace. The sound was wrong. It wasn't the four-legged gait of a coyote or a bear. It sounded like something walking on two legs, but trying not to be heard. A wave of pure, primal fear washed over me. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. Ben clicked his light back on, and we followed suit, our beams cutting through the dark like swords. We scanned the trees, the bushes, everywhere. The shuffling stopped the moment our lights came on. The woods fell silent again, but the feeling of being watched was now overwhelming. It was a physical presence, a pressure in the air. "Okay," Ben said, his voice strained but steady. "Change of plan. We're heading back to the rendezvous point now. Stick close." There was no argument. We turned around and started walking back the way we came, much faster this time. We moved in a tight diamond formation, our backs to each other, our lights covering every angle. The fear was a living thing now, crawling up our spines. We hadn't gone more than 100 yards when Sam let out a choked gasp. "Up there!" To the right, he pointed his light back up into the trees, and there they were again. The same two burning eyes, watching us. This time, they were closer, maybe only 30 yards away, and still just as high. They stared down at us, filled with a cold, ancient intelligence. As we watched, frozen in terror, a low sound drifted down from the canopy. It was a voice, or something that sounded almost like a voice. It was a low, guttural whisper, mimicking the static from Ben's radio. It was a perfect, chilling imitation of the crackle and hiss. Then, it mimicked Ben's voice, distorted and stretched. "Base, this is Patrol 1. Stand by." The words were warped, spoken in a cadence that was deeply, fundamentally inhuman. It was like something was trying to learn our language by listening to us, and it was getting it terrifyingly right. That's when we broke. The last thread of our composure snapped. We didn't even yell. We just ran. It was a frantic, desperate scramble through the undergrowth, branches whipping at our faces. We abandoned the trail, just trying to put distance between us and that thing. Behind us, we could hear it. It was no longer being stealthy. It was crashing through the woods, keeping pace with us effortlessly. The sound was horrifying, a heavy thud of 2 feet, combined with a strange clicking and snapping, like bones reconfiguring with every step. And the voice he'd followed, us calling out in our own voices. It mimicked Dave's nervous murmur from earlier. "What is that?" It mimicked my own breathy question. It was toying with us, a cat playing with terrified mice. We ran blindly, fueled by pure adrenaline. I remember tripping and falling, my headlamp flying off. For a second, I was plunged into total darkness, the monstrous sounds getting closer. Sam grabbed my arm and hauled me to my feet, and we kept running. We burst out of the tree line and into a small clearing where we'd parked our truck. We fumbled with the doors, piled in, and Ben slammed his foot on the gas. The tires squealed as we tore out of there, leaving the dark woods behind. We didn't speak for the entire drive back to base. We just sat there, shaking, covered in scratches and sweat. The memory of those eyes burned into our minds. When we finally got back, we tried to explain what happened. Our supervisor listened, his face grim. He'd heard stories like ours before. Local legends of the area spoke of them. Creatures that could mimic voices, that could change their shape. Things that were once men, but were now something else entirely. They called them None of us ever patrolled in those woods at night again. I left the search and rescue team a few months later. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sometimes, even now, when I'm outside at night, I find myself looking up into the trees, half expecting to see two burning eyes looking back at me from the darkness. The woods hold secrets, ancient and terrible secrets, and some of them have eyes that watch you from the shadows. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more Tales from the Dark. Stay safe out there. The first time I heard the scream, I dismissed it as the wind. Up here, in the shadow of Twin Peaks, the wind howls like a banshee. A constant, mournful cry that plays tricks on your ears. I'd been a fire lookout for 3 seasons, stationed in the old Osprey Point Tower, and I thought I'd heard every sound these mountains could make. I was wrong. It was late September, the air crisp with the coming autumn. The aspens a brilliant, fiery gold against the dark pines. The summer haze had vanished, and the peaks stood out in sharp, brutal detail against the endless blue sky. That's when the first call came over the radio. A hiker, overdue. Not unusual. People underestimate these mountains all the time. But then another call came. And another. A family of 4 vanished from their campsite near Emerald Lake. All their gear was still their tent. Sleeping bags, even a pot of half-cooked chili hanging over a cold fire pit. They were just gone. Search and rescue set up a base camp. Their bright orange jackets a stark contrast to the deep greens and browns of the forest. I watched them through my binoculars, a small army of determined figures combing the trails. Days turned into a week. The mood shifted from hopeful to grim. The nights grew longer, colder, and the sounds started. At first, it was that high-pitched scream, closer this time, echoing off the granite faces of the peaks. It wasn't the wind, it was a sound of pure, abject terror. A sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up and a cold dread snake its way down my spine. Then came the whispers, faint at first, carried on the breeze. They sounded like my name, stretched and distorted, a hollow, rasping sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion, the isolation playing with my mind. I'd spent countless nights alone up here, but this felt different. This felt like I wasn't alone anymore. One evening, as the sun bled out behind the mountains, casting long, skeletal shadows across the valley, I saw it. I was scanning the ridgeline to the east, just below Twin Peaks, when a flicker of movement caught my eye. It was too fast, too fluid to be a deer or an elk. I focused my binoculars, my heart hammering against my ribs. What I saw, it didn't make sense. It was tall, impossibly so, and thin, like a dead tree stripped of its bark. Its limbs were long and angular, moving with a jerky, unnatural grace as it picked its way through the scree. Its color was the pale, sickly white of bone, bleached by the sun. It stopped and turned its head, and even from that distance, I felt a chilling sense of being watched, of Bang Sheen. There was a dark, hollow space where a face should be, a void that seemed to suck in the fading light. I dropped the binoculars, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I didn't sleep that night. Every gust of wind was the sound of it climbing the tower stairs. Every creak of the old wooden structure was the sound of its long fingers testing the door. The next morning, the radio crackled to life. It was Sheriff Miller. His voice was strained, heavy with a fatigue that went beyond lack of sleep. "We're pulling the search," he said, calling it off. There's nothing left to find." I asked him what he meant. There was a long silence on the other end, filled only with static. "We found some tracks," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "They don't match any known animal, and we found things. Scattered. Torn clothing. A backpack." He paused again. "It's not a bear, son. Whatever's out there. It's something else." After he signed off, a profound silence fell over the tower, heavier and more menacing than any storm. The search teams packed up and left, their orange jackets disappearing down the winding mountain road, leaving me truly alone with the peaks and the creeping dread. The beautiful, majestic mountains I had loved now felt like a prison, and I was trapped inside with a monster from the darkest of nightmares. That night, the whispers came back, louder, more insistent. They weren't just calling my name anymore. They were promises of warmth in the freezing air, of company in the crushing loneliness. They spoke of an end to hunger, annoying, insatiable hunger I hadn't even realized I was feeling. I barricaded the door with my cot and the supply chest, my hands clumsy with fear. The temperature plummeted, and frost began to creep across the inside of the window panes. Through a small, clear patch, I stared out into the oppressive darkness, and then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, not on the door, but on the glass, 60 feet above the ground. Tap, tap, tap. My blood ran cold. I couldn't bring myself to look up to see the source of the sound. The tapping stopped, replaced by a low, scraping noise, like fingernails, dragging slowly down the glass. A long, pale finger, more like a gnarled branch, traced a line in the frost, its tip leaving a dark, wet trail. I huddled in the corner, clutching the fire axe, the only weapon I had. The whispers were inside my head now, a chorus of despair and ravenous desire. It knew my fears. It spoke of my family, of my regrets, of every dark thought I'd ever had. It was trying to break me, to hollow me out from the inside. The scraping on the window continued for what felt like an eternity, a slow, patient torture. Then, a new sound, the groaning of stressed metal. I looked up at the trapdoor in the ceiling that led to the exterior catwalk. It was bowing inward, the thick steel bolts straining against an immense, unseen pressure. A fine dust of rust and paint flakes rained down on me. With a horrifying shriek of tearing metal, one of the bolts snapped, then another. I scrambled for the radio, my fingers fumbling with the dial. "Mayday, Mayday, Osprey Point Tower. Something's trying to get in." "It's on the roof." My voice was a choked, pathetic squeak. The only reply was a burst of static, followed by a faint, distorted whisper that came through the speaker. It was my own voice, twisted into a mocking, hungry rasp, with a final deafening crack. The trapdoor ripped free from its hinges and was thrown aside. For a moment, there was only the black, star-filled sky. Then, a shape descended, unfolding itself into the cramped space of the lookout tower. It was skeletal, its gray, taut skin stretched over a frame that was all wrong, all sharp angles and impossible length. Its head tilted, and from the deep, shadowed pits of its eyes, an ancient, malevolent intelligence stared right through me. A foul stench filled the room, the smell of decay and frozen earth. It opened its mouth, a jagged, lipless tear in its face, and a sound emerged, not a roar, but a dry, rattling hiss that mimicked the whispers, the scream, and the wind all at once. It was the sound of utter starvation. I didn't scream, primera, good, und. All I could do was stare into the abyss that had come for me. This is my last entry. I'm broadcasting this on a loop. Don't come looking. Don't come to Twin Peaks. The hunger is eternal, and the mountains are its home. It's always watching, always.